All right. Well, welcome to the Young Lawyer Podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join me on it.
No worries. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No worries. So I guess let's start. How did you get into law?
So I got into law. Interesting story. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was first going into university. I actually initially started out doing an applied finance and accounting degree. I was in there for about 6 months when I realized it wasn't for me. So I switched universities and I just did a social science degree because that's sort of what I liked in high school. But I knew my family wouldn't be happy with that. They'd be like, "Oh, what career does that lead to?" So to just make them happy, I tacked on a law degree. So I did it as a double degree. And as it turned out, I actually ended up really enjoying the law aspect. So it was really, for me, by luck. And yeah, it just kind of went from there.
I found that to be a very common theme coming out of high school. No one really knows what they want to do, but there's so much pressure on kids to have a decision, whereas they don't really have a chance to find themselves. But yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of people have jumped into a law degree because there is many pathways to it. What is it about the law that I guess attracted you so much to it over, your social science or your business degree?
I think it's the problem solving aspect of it. For me, it's I really enjoy the fact that it actually takes a lot out of you mentally. Like if you come across a really interesting case, there's so much gray. I love that it's not black and white, and that you develop a lot of skills in trying to understand both points of view and understanding all the different aspects to a matter, and all the different sort of legal reasonings that can be used to reach a conclusion. It's law's interesting because there's not necessarily a final answer to a question, and that's why things often end up in court before a judge to get that answer and to get a precedent on a question that may have never been answered before. So I really enjoy that process of trying to problem solve and get an answer to something and try and resolve it in a really appropriate manner, depending on what the case is.
Yeah, that was one of the main reasons I fell in love with the law too. Because my movie yesterday asked me the same question from the admission ceremony. He's like, why'd you like it? I'm like, it's just problem solving. I love problem solving and helping people. So then after the degree, how did your journey go from there?
So while I was studying, I was also working full time. I was actually working at the university through which I obtained my degree. I worked at the call center there and obtained a lot of office administration experience through that role. And I had a couple of secondments within the university itself. And one of those secondments involved dealing with a lot of the university sponsors, and a lot of their sponsors were actual law firms. So I started applying for clerkships as I approached the end of my degree. I was probably in my penultimate year when I applied for a number of different firms that I became aware of through that relationship with the university, and obtained a clerkship at my former employment law firm. So I did a clerkship there just over the summer. And then I didn't continue my role there past the clerkship. I went back to the university and did a couple of other roles there. But once I went towards graduation, I looked for graduate programs. And it's funny because I remember when I was looking for graduate programs, I was very conscious and aware of the stigma with law and how it's very demanding. There's no work-life balance. It's all you would hear towards the end of law school. So I got really scared of that. And I didn't like the idea of, being stuck in that kind of a situation. So I actually only applied for government graduate programs because everyone was like, "Oh, well, government is so great. It's pretty laid back." And I had been working at the university for some time by then. And I noticed that, the university was like semi-government in the way that it operated. So I really enjoyed what I was doing at the uni and the way things were. And I was like, I'd love to continue that, but doing something within my profession. So there weren't any opportunities within the university itself. So I applied for graduate programs and I got into a grad program with Transport New South Wales. So I was there for 6 months, and that's sort of how I entered my post-admission working career. But I didn't enjoy it because it just wasn't challenging enough. Like, it would be a really good role for someone who, when you're later in life wanting to settle down and, not be doing so many hours. But in terms of learning and as a starting point, I just wasn't being fulfilled. I just didn't have enough to do, and I wasn't learning and I was getting bored. So I decided to take the leap into private practice and went in the complete opposite direction in terms of hours and work. And yeah, it was, a very long journey in the sense of the number of hours I did and how much was expected of me and how much I did. But it was an absolutely amazing working experience. And I learned so much in my time working in private practice that it's kind of led me to where I am today, which is operating my own law firm.
Yeah, I find that so intriguing. Coming out of uni, you're timid to go towards the long hours, but then when you actually get into it, you find that I guess when you actually enjoy it, it seems to fly by, and you don't have a problem putting in the work for it.
Exactly. And it's not a constant either. I think that's the other stigma. It depends on, your organization skills. Like, how organized are you? How efficiently are you working? Are you on top of your matters? The long hours and the really hard work comes from how much litigation you're doing and how you're managing that litigation. So, if you're leaving things to last minute and you're not preparing your affidavit from, day one when you get your court timetable, then of course you're going to be stressed and working really long hours. You don't have a choice. You've done it to yourself. But, if you manage your work well, granted, there'll still be long hours because you're not in control of how many files you're being given. But, there's little things you can do here and there to try and at least eliminate the stressful aspect of those long hours.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And now you said you're running your own company or law firm at the moment.
Yes, that's right. So I've actually launched my practice approximately a month ago. It's very, very new,
Very new.
and I'm very excited about it. But yeah, no, it's going very well.
And what was the law firm again? Sorry.
The name of my law firm's Corporate Legal. So my firm specializes in commercial legal services, mainly for small to medium business enterprises. But I also offer other services like conveyancing and debt recovery. So I'd consider those three areas as my primary areas.
And how did you, I guess, narrow down those fields of choice? Was it just through work experience, or was it ones you found at uni that you found to be more exciting than the others? Or
for me, it was from my work experience. So they're the three main areas that I've developed most of my experience in the last few years, especially in the last 2 to 3 years. I've probably been exclusively working in those three areas. Interesting you mentioned university. When I was studying at university, the subjects that piqued my interest the most were the ones that I was not interested in at all when it came to practice. Sometimes the theory doesn't line up to the practice, and sometimes in uni, I found subjects like contracts and property law so boring, and it's not things that you can visualize the way you can with criminal law or family law. You read the facts of those cases that you learn in university and you can visualize it, you can see what's happening. But things like contract law and property law, it's really hard to visualize and understand until you're in it and actually dealing with the matter. And when I dealt with contract law and property law throughout my experience, I actually started developing a really big interest in those areas. So it kind of led me towards what I focused on and got my experience in, and what I'm specializing in now at my firm today.
yeah, that's very interesting because I'm pretty much similar. Had a background in criminal, so uni was pretty nice to do criminal and whatnot. But then once I got out and started doing work experience for my graduate program, I found that I really enjoyed litigation and actually going through commercial contracts and all that sort of stuff as well. In saying that, though, from going from university to a law, how did you handle the transition?
I think I wouldn't say I felt the transition too much, just because I was already used to working full time. I had started working full time probably in my third year of my double degree. So I switched to night classes and I was working full time and studying full time. So it was pretty full on. And it was, when I first started doing that, it was a big adjustment because you're just not used to working full time. It's a lot. You go from usually a casual job to, having this huge additional workload on you in terms of hours. So I found that I was initially very, very tired and didn't have energy to go out with my friends anymore. But just like anything in life, just like any other milestone or change in your life, you get used to it. It just becomes your new normal. And that's exactly what kind of happened with me. I think after a while, it was just my new normal. And, you've got the support of the people around you. Just keep your friends and family close, and have a good relationship with your boss and your university. And, it helps things go much more smoothly for you.
Yeah, as I've learned from doing these podcasts, law is very collegial. A lot of people are willing to, give you a hand to help mentor, or come for an interview, which has been, really amazing to see. In saying that, what setbacks did you face along your journey, whether it's through uni or just as a lawyer, or even starting your own business now?
I think the biggest setback really is, especially in your early years when you're going into practice, like there's a lot of learning lessons for you, and it just depends on what kind of a personality you have. We all have a tendency to, whatever your weakness is, it will somehow come up in at least one matter that will cause an issue. For me, I remember one of the biggest mistakes I made was probably in my first 2 months in my practice. And it was a big mistake. I think it was like a legal administration matter, and I was given it was a probate matter, and we were dealing with the shares, and I misunderstood the instructions from my boss. I was expected to get instructions from the client regarding what they wanted to do with the shares, but I misunderstood and thought that I was to send off this letter. It was like a precedent letter. So I didn't draft it. I got given the precedent and thought I was meant to send that off to the actual shareholder. And it was basically instructing them to sell the shares on behalf of the estate. So I basically did that, and they sold the shares. And then I realized afterwards, we never had the client's instructions to do that. The client wanted to keep the shares, if anything. And then it was the question of well, how much did we sell the shares for? What are they worth now? Was it going to go up? It would have been a huge problem. Luckily we got it all sorted out and the client was okay. But it really rammed it home from day one that, always make sure you have your client's instructions, confirm things in writing. If you're unsure about what you're meant to do, go back and seek further clarification before doing anything. So that was a big learning lesson for me. Aside from that, the other thing that I probably would say was the biggest thing that I learned was developing resilience. There will be tough times in terms of getting a reality check. You might think you're doing great on something, but someone will pull you up on it. And sometimes the delivery of you being told you did something wrong can be a bit hard to take when you're not used to that. I feel up until you work in a firm or whatever you do for a career after uni, up until that point, the jobs we have, you get pretty much coddled, and you don't really get the reality check aspect of it. But I think when you enter the real world, there's no more time wasting. People just get to the point when they're telling you that you've done something wrong and you need to fix it. And it really helps you with building your resilience and being comfortable to have, take those difficult conversations, but also have them yourself when you need to.
Yeah, that's so true. Because one of the main things yesterday, the barrister was like, usually when you've had a letter or you're organising a client, you've given it to the solicitor to sign. That's going to be the biggest nerve-wracking thing when you first go over is, it's your responsibility now. You got to put your head down and take full responsibility for your mistakes.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so on top of resilience and organizational skills, what else? What other skills do you reckon is required for a good lawyer or a successful lawyer?
I think communication skills is probably the most important thing, and customer service skills. I mean, at the end of the day, as lawyers, we love the law and we love getting into the nitty-gritty of it. But you need to remember, especially if it depends on what kind of law you're doing, but if you're in private practice, you have clients. That's the whole point of what you're doing, really, is to solve their problem. It doesn't matter if you're sitting there doing something amazing on your computer with your research and you're thinking, wow, I'm doing such a great job on this case. If you're not updating your client, keeping them up to speed on what you're doing and making sure those communication lines are open, it's not going to look good to them. They're going to, we sometimes forget that a lot of what we do is behind the scenes. So, and we put especially if you have court deadline in a couple of days and you're preparing for it, sometimes the client communication, I've noticed, at least in my experience, is a bit of an afterthought, and it can't be. It has to be number one. Clients should know when the next court date is. Even if they don't need to attend, they need to know what's happening with their matter, and it needs to be regular communication, even if it's as simple as, I know it's been 4 weeks, but we're still waiting on the court. Don't know if it's going to be another 4 weeks. Even if it's just an update to tell them that nothing's happening, the fact that they're getting that update at least means that in their mind, they can see that you're actively working on the matter rather than just complete radio silence. So I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and that all comes down to time organization as well, because, you know, especially when you're getting loads of files, you got to try and keep track of who's got court dates when and who's actually being told when their court dates are.
Yeah, and today with the technology we have, like, there's really no excuse to be missing court deadlines or anything like that. I mean, all of that stuff can be diarized. Even reminding yourself to touch base with the client, you know, never depend on your memory. Like, the memory is very, very fallible. So always use the technology you have around you to get yourself organized, and it alleviates a lot of the stress as well, because when you look at your task list for the day and you know you have 8 hours and something new came up, you can easily see this is all I have to do, and actually I can move about 6 or 7 of these 10 items to tomorrow so I can focus on this new thing that's urgent that just got put on my desk.
Yeah, completely agree. And then just one final thing for the listeners. For someone who's wanting to start a legal career, what would your advice be to them?
My advice would be go in with eyes wide open, be open to any experience that you have. Just understand that everything you're getting is part of the journey. Sometimes you might end up doing a role or doing something that you don't really see the benefit of, or you find it boring, or maybe it's not interesting. You know, stick it out for a little bit before you make a too hasty a decision about what you want to do. It can take a while to really get into the, into the swing of things. You know, I myself, in my first 6 months of practicing as a solicitor, I remember at the end of my 3rd or 4th month, I was like, I can't do this. I love traveling. I'm going to be a travel consultant. I'm going to go apply to Flight Centre. I'm not going to do this anymore. It's too hard. And through the support of my family, like, I stuck it out. They were all like, no, you work too hard for this. You love the law. Keep giving it a go. And here I am today. So just don't make any hasty decisions if you feel like you're overwhelmed. And just if something doesn't feel right to you, it doesn't mean that the law's not right for you. It could be that there's just a different role that is better suited to you. There's so many different areas of law. There's so many different ways in which you can practice law, whether it's government or private or in-house. There's a lot of options for you. So just be open to those experiences.
Yeah, and think a bit long-term rather than short-term as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
everyone has to work hard at the beginning,
yeah.
But eventually it will pay off.
Completely agree to that. And, you know, I'm trying to get into the workforce at the moment. It's getting a bit harder with everything going on, but trying to get there.
You'll get there. Just don't give up.
Yeah, I'm trying. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and joining me today on the podcast. It was great to have you on. And I look forward to keeping in touch and hopefully getting you on again sometime in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Bye.
All right. Bye.